Welcome to Inside the Set with Set Decor, a series that focuses on the design and decor of the stories that excite us and ignite our imagination, where we discuss the collaboration between set decorators and production designers and hear first-hand accounts of how these works of art came to be, from their inception, ideas on a page, to completion, when we get to sit in the dark and experience them collectively.
Welcome to Inside the Set with Set Decor. I'm Jen Pascale, SDSA, and today I'm delighted to welcome Emmy Award and SDSA Award nominees, set decorator Halina Siwolop SDSA and production designer Warren Allen Young to discuss their remarkable collaboration on Spider-Noir, the visually stunning Prime Video series that reimagines the legendary Marvel character through the evocative style of 1930s film noir. Their recently announced Emmy nomination is so fitting in recognition of the extraordinary world they've created together. We're thrilled to have them share their creative journey behind it. Halina and Warren, congratulations on your nominations, and thank you both for joining us.
Thank you.
Thank you.
There's a lot to tackle and a lot to unpack here. So you have superheroes and you have black and white. Either one on its own is enough to make your head spin. But you not only had to do the black and white, you had to make the color grade too. I want you each to tell me what was your initial approach to this, aside from, oh my God, what are we going to do? How are we going to do this?
The pitch that the creator of the show, Oren Uzio, presented to Lord Miller and Sony and Pascale, Amy Pascale, was not of the character that they had asked him to write about, but was about someone he could relate to, a middle-aged guy who's cynical, who's not as strong as he used to be, not as fast as he used to be, and really just didn't care anymore about rescuing people. And that was something I could relate to instantly. Oren and I are same age group. I still want to help people, but no, I'm not as fast as I used to be, got aches and pains and whatnot. That as an approach to the story was brilliant for me. And also America of today reflected through challenges of Great Depression era in New York, 1933. That's what caught my attention.
We really tried to bring a grittiness to this project. All the departments did the research, and we really tried to portray the world as it was and to help support the sad sack character of Spider-Man and kind of that down and out feeling that we were able to capture. And the black and white, I think, really keyed into that. It gave that noir feeling.
Research is always, it's my favorite thing. So I'm sure.
Here.
But you guys really, really captured it. There's some traditional locations that we use here in LA to represent New York, and it was so great to see those being utilized again. This is Warner Brothers Hennessy Street. But you made it look a lot of different ways. So can you tell us a little bit about the monumental task that it is to decorate a backdrop?
We did so much work on these backdrops, and when you walk through, they looked amazing. And then they shot it all at night, and you're like, yeah, you didn't really see anything. But it was really great support. And Warren and I talked about what space is what and how to make it feel like it's New York and what establishments were there. And then what did they look like in real life? And then what were our limitations in trying to make that happen, right? And then there's the whole color palette. Because even though we're doing black and white, we're also doing this really amazing color palette that Warren came up with and trying to make it give that comic book feel.
So I'm a black and white junkie, so I watched it in black and white first, and then I went back and watched some of the other episodes in color. But I have so many questions on what
One, I should add, I'm also a photographer, and so my understanding of color and use of color and lighting, it really goes hand in hand with the design of the sets. And spent a lot of time with Darren, our DP. But what you're seeing here in terms of the color is really a reflection of what we found in research, in reality. So fortunately, more and more color photography of the era has started to find its way to the world. And in fact, there was a great book, I don't remember the title right now, that Darren Tiernan, our lead DP, found that was a collection of autochrome plates a photographer found, cleaned up, reprinted and then did some accentuation on the colors. And that was really our starting point. We thought that was where we were going to land with the colors, but that was really our starting point. But anyway, seeing that book and collections at the Library of Congress and elsewhere really helped us to understand what colors looked and felt like. But you would have gone into any number of upscale clubs of the day and found this rich look of colors, especially when you consider that a lot of the architecture and design of upscale places in particular was a result of what happened during the Roaring Twenties, when the color palette of the world, if you will, had exploded from a much more muted scenario, darker and more or muted scenario. And I wanted to, really lean into that idea. In fact, the panels that you see, sort of multi-dimensional panels on left and right of the proscenium, I got that inspiration from elevator doors in the Rockefeller Center. It's gold. It's flowers and plants that are gold and silver. I spent a lot of time in Detroit for work and also for family. And I've gone into these old buildings, and you see all this Art Deco where these rich hues are used in even in the metalwork on some of the original building. And since we were then charged, I wanted to say forced, but I'll just say charged with creating a color version as well as a black and white version, the goal then was to create something that was hopefully as interesting as what we felt our black and white version was going to be. And it wasn't just in the high end places; it was also, on the streets. And you can, the WPA photography was also has been a great resource for me for a number of projects. But we wanted it to feel real, and there's a bit more saturation, to Helena's point, to sort of lean into the comic book world, but not too heavily. We Dick Tracy, was great, was fun, and they had their moment with that. I wasn't chasing that. I was really trying to give us an original look that also was very seated in reality.
He's absolutely right. We didn't do what you think of typical primary colors in the comic book world, but we went into that autochrome. We would put a vivid warm filter on our cameras as we were looking at colors to try to figure out what the right colors were. And to me, that's just a different look. And I think it worked. And then you had to translate that to black and white also.
And for the black and white, did you
Mhm.
use the noir filter on the cameras?
Yes,
Well, yeah,
100%.
and there was another element. The series was shot with a Sony Venice camera, and then Sony gave us Sony FX3, which is a really elaborate point and shoot version of the Sony Venice camera. If you're using a motion picture camera that's using film, there may be different filters that the DP will put on the camera to affect different temperatures, different colors. However, with a digital camera, you've got the advantage of being able to add a digital filter into the camera so that the camera sensors are receiving the lights and colors as you want them to. And that was a result of weeks of work that we did with Darren Tiernan. Punk Oz, our amazing colorist who we're working with now, actually, on another project. Tracy Gigi Field, Oren and Steve, our showrunners, as well as the Lord Miller people. And coming, so we came up with a series of looks, two LUTs for the black and white, so two filters, if you will, and then I think I think it's five where we landed for the color as well, and the color LUT that was used depended on time of day, character, etc. So you might see a series of color LUTs used throughout an episode, depending on where they were being placed. And once we got an understanding or some understanding of what was happening, a quick way to break down what the black and white be like would go to on an iPhone, go into the noir look, but then take the contrast up even more, dial the black point in even more, because ultimately the goal is a classic film noir look, and the black spaces were really black or really dark, and but having the Sony FX3 camera was really helpful once we got them, because first we were ordered to make this color version, and then they were like, well, do you want to set up a camera test, a 24-hour, 24/7 camera test on stage? No. And then Darren said, well, why don't you give them the FX3s? Because he already knew that they were capable of giving us what we needed. And yeah, so we had it. The costume designer Tracy had it, and they were set up eventually all the time. Yeah.
Yeah, so we would go from shooting at our vendors and the prop houses and saying like, yeah, this is a pretty close range. And then we'd bring those bits of what we could, like fabrics, into the office to make sure that it worked on that camera also, because sometimes you would have to tweak it a little bit.
Sometimes it's with black and white, I've learned through my own experience that it's shapes and values.
Yes.
But then you have the added layer of needing to have the right colors
Yeah.
too, for the color version.
When I found out that I got the job, one of the next thing I did was call my friend and mentor, production designer Lawrence Bennett, and I was like, "Hey, I got this black and white thing," because we were only gonna do black and white at that point. What can you tell me? What tips? And he laughed, he smiled, congratulations. He said, "Watch El Condre, the movie, shot in black and white." I didn't want to be in his ear 24/7, although he's always happy for me to call, for some insight or to share experiences. But what I saw in that project was a modern day exercise of noir.
Mhm.
And so the darks, the blacks really were dark in that movie. That was really a jumping off point for me, and as well as all the classic film noir movies that I've been watching since I was too young to watch them.
Now, Helena, I have to ask you, since we decorators often are the lighting department and lighting the sets, how many fixtures? I saw a lot of beautiful chandeliers, but did it force you to increase the amount of practicals?
Absolutely, because when you see the black and white, you can see how dark it goes, right? And then, we're trying to give your classic shaft of light, the noir look that everyone really resonates with. You need to light the set, you still need it moody. We worked really closely with our fixtures people on making sure that we had the right lighting. I'll put in more fixtures and I can always take them away because what DP doesn't love a little pop of light here and there?
That construction site where they have their big fight, where was that?
Stage 27 at Sony.
Oh, yeah. That was fantastic. Was that set extensions?
Yeah, so we built a, I don't know, 3 to 4-story tall, steel framed set. We have a wonderful, my team, Al, who's an amazing welder and metalsmith. He and our set designer, that was Eugene set, and an engineer works to get the set to what was practical, what was safe, also what was affordable. In fact, we had a more expensive version designed at one point. There were some realities that had nothing to do with us that came to the show, and so we were asked to come up with a reduced scale version of it. The real trick there was the choreography of the fight scene. There were 2 and a half floors of usable space, and Helena and her team were charged with helping to create, it was like a labyrinth, if you will, on this limited floor plan. So they each day that the team came in to film at the set, and sometimes we needed a 24-hour turnaround
Uh,
to move some of the set dressing around.
That was fun.
Yeah, right. Overnight, here it comes. Yeah, and then the set was surrounded by a blue screen on 360 degrees, so that we could have the environment, the city of New York in the background, Manhattan.
That was really fun to decorate because, I love working with the stunts team and trying to figure out, and then, VFX also, like, what can we see, what can't we see, creating these obstacles for them and things for them to fall into, and that's just always a fun dance of, like, how do we make this look real, right?
because we are so interwoven between departments, they play off of what you've placed there, which worked so beautifully.
And that's the thing that when I guest lecture at the film schools, or have visitors, young visitors come in. It's like, look, it's not just about your job. You have to know what everyone else's needs and wants are. Be aware of the wider world instead of what you're creating.
No, totally, and even, the fabulous shanty town that you created, it was so detailed, and there were so many I wanted to peer around every corner, but all the details, I mean, researching that era had to be so much fun, and also getting into the World War I research, creating those battlefields and hospitals, and tell us a little bit more about that.
This is where we see the experiments that are taking place that ultimately go to create Ben as we will come to know him. This is the origin point. And this is, I don't know if you know Willow Street Studios in downtown Los Angeles, which used to be
Uh-huh.
a meat packing
Yes.
facility. So it was ideal, inherently ideal for a lot of what we were trying to create. The textures, a lot of what we wanted was there, and the space was kind of limited. So Helena coming in here to figure out how to get the reality in the space based on what the showrunner was looking for, Orrin and Steve. There was an octopus, I think, in one jar, and there's another. There's an ant. There's a giant insect of different types of insects, different types of animals in these jars with these tubes leading to the human experiments. And you're seeing this because of the exchange of DNA, they're starting to take on deformities. So, some of the research for me, sadly, comes from what the Nazis were doing in the human experimentation during World War II, in order to understand the types of equipment that might have been used during the era. That was unfortunately somewhere we had to go to really see how dark it was.
And this set was a really great blend of reality and fantasy. Like, you really this is where you get into, like, the comic book element, right? Where we had to come up with all these jars that these creatures were in, and the octopus, and then how do you make it look like it's kinda scientific, and then working with special effects and with the prop, master and their team. Like, again, it was just like, how do you bring this fantastical element and make it look like would it actually work?
It was amazing. I mean, and just to find all that medical equipment from that era, and then you had to do the newer lab also for Dr. Faber.
The experience of bringing this set together was phenomenal. Our creature maker, and we found out only later they had been working on these already. So we had to design the sort of vessels around those, and he did some editing in his design, but he was pretty far along into the process, and so there's a bit of sort of Jules Verne involved here. The big fan of 20,000 Leagues, the original movie, but also again trying to understand not only what the world really looked like, but then also what it would feel like, to Helena's point, from a comic book perspective.
I have to say when I first read it on the page, I thought my head was gonna pop off.
Yes, yes,
Like, "Wait, creature pods? How are we gonna do this?" But he had
yeah.
such an amazing team of people and artists who created these things that I feel like it worked.
There's so much detail. It seemed like they really allowed you to pull out the stops.
The producers were so supportive, and the studio, the network. And people would come together and find ways for us to be able to deliver these ideas in the dynamic fashion that they needed to be, or even if it was something that wasn't dynamic, so that we could have opportunity to create the environments that made sense.
And Warren and I always talked about, layers and texture. So, whether you're doing color or black and white, you want that texture to come through so it doesn't look flat. It doesn't look like a set.
The police station with the vaulted ceilings, Helena, I know we all read police station and we start to cry because it's not another police station, but you all made it look so much more interesting.
That was really an incredible space too. You guys, Warren chose a really great location, and we had an empty space. So then how do you make it look like an actual police station? So, we all worked on a floor plan together, and then we just had to find the bits. That was fun. I really liked that set. That was good.
I was afraid of that one at first because the truth be told, I first worked in that building. That's the old B of A building on Spring at 6th Street. And it's been used so many times. I know in my indie days in the 90s and early aughts, for every music video, commercial, short movie, I'd been in that building for any number of sets. And I was hoping that we could find a limited scope. That we got a lot of help from our DP to help us really see what we wanted to see and not see so much of the space that it just seemed like, that space again. And also really, in a contained manner, sort of forces the space to feel like it's another, yet another sort of gem in New York, that you had not experienced yet. And resources played a part in that as well. But I was pleased with where we landed in the end.
And then when Janet is able to march down the center of the 2 lines of desks,
So
there she
sassy.
is. She
Yeah.
was sassy, exactly.
That was a last
Loved
minute
her.
adjustment too, because those desks were going to be somewhere else. Okay, this was on the day, if I remember correctly, that the desk were moved, and it worked. Yeah.
There were sets that you went back to episode after episode,
Mhm,
so were any of those built, or were those
mhm,
locations like Ben's apartment, you went to a couple of times, I think,
mhm.
That was a
the
build.
the
Yes.
club was a build, right?
Yes.
There's only one glass. I haven't had many guests. Oh, well, here's another, but it's used. I'll just use the used glass.
I
Uh-huh.
love that he only had 1 glass in his apartment.
Yeah, yeah.
Well, thank you for noticing.
Yes, yes.
I mean, it's all of those little details that mean so much because we read so much into the story.
Warren showed me a really great picture of tenement housing, and so we really based his set on that. Like, if you had nothing, what do you have, and how do you give yourself privacy? So, we had a lot of fun with, like, curtains and curtain partitions, and that also gives a really great layered and kind of, lived-in look. So, I don't feel like we shot in there enough,
I
but I
agree.
liked it.
Yes, I agree.
I agree. But then to contrast that with Silvermane's place, it was so rich and lush and his gorgeous drapes on his bed. And I hope that one was fun to do for you, Helena.
Yeah, and I have to give a big shout out to all the drapery departments in town. Like through the whole series, we were using Universal, Warner Brothers, Omega. We couldn't have done this job without them because we kept everybody busy. They really knocked it out of the park.
Because you had drapes everywhere. I mean, it
Yep.
was like
Everywhere,
a
yes.
study. You could almost do a textbook on your drapery.
Yeah.
It
Yeah.
was every style in every room, in every economic level. Was her place, was that a hotel too?
It's a set.
Or
It's
ah,
an apartment set.
mhm.
The exterior of which you do see in a couple of episodes is in downtown LA on Broadway. But yeah, this was a set on stage that we had to squeeze in actually in order to allow that shot for Ben to come in through the window. Story wise, the apartment is given to her or provided to her from Silvermane. So in my mind, it's a gilded cage, and that explains for me the wallpaper in her bedroom. It wouldn't have been what she would have designed. It's more in the vein of what Silvermane feels is appropriate.
And there was a really nice collaboration between our departments and costumes because when you see it, the color versions, everything just kind of really works together. And costumes just knocked it out of the park too.
This scene blew me away, and the way she was silhouetted with it. It was interesting that when you see the bright orange color, it photographed almost like a red, though, like a lush, didn't look bright orange when I thought.
There's gold on the edges of that structure, metallic gold, and so the light color is reflecting off of that. Yeah, and when you watch the broadcast, it's a little more, it's more gold than what you're saying here. But we had started laying this out, and the set, I had gold around the proscenium and the arches around the proscenium, and I'm showing Tracy, our costume designer, what we had, and Tracy started a year before me actually to design Nick's suit. And just in playing around, she had started with some of these other designs, and basically designing in a vacuum before she had an opportunity to talk to a production designer or a cinematographer. This was at one point where we realized that, oh wait, gold and gold. Let's see what we can do to make an adjustment here. And the dress was, I thought, was going to be fantastic, as well as the headpiece. And when we were just going to be a black and white project, it wouldn't have mattered. But in the color world, it made a difference. So, working with Darren, our cinematographer, and Tracy in our paint team, we were able to give you, what you see, and something that works, and where the separation is appropriate. She's the gem of the space, and I didn't want the set to overwhelm that.
You did some shooting down in downtown LA, right? I could see Orpheum. It's subtracting when we're doing streets like that, right? Which is a total nightmare, but how did that work for you?
It's subtracting, it's adding. When we were on Broadway, the exterior alcove, those were all contemporary storefronts, and some people didn't wanna play with us, and some people, like, all we could do was window treatments, but I got to do Austrian curtains, which I just loved. Woo! That was my favorite window, I think. And that was Warren's idea, and I was like, "Yes!"
The Bonwit Teller store in New York.
We looked at that research and, again, great drapers were able to pull it off, but everything was so temporary, but when you see it from the street, it actually works.
You so often you see him the view of walking into the alcove. That's what I wondered if did you shoot all of that at one time?
We went back a couple of times, right?
Mhm. Yeah, but then the scope was reduced. Each time we went back, the scope of that exterior shot became a bit more narrow, longer lens, slightly longer lens each time.
My favorite was, "Put a flower cart over here to
Mm.
block that."
Mhm.
There's always that one thing that you it's the old phone booth that we used to carry
Yes.
around, right?
Right,
But
right.
you had some really interesting phone booths, Helena. Did you build those?
No, we actually, those were all rentals. One of them we had augmented when I was on Perry Mason, and it kinda, I think it was still the same, but, yeah, those were all rentals
Yeah.
from our vendors. That was wonderful.
We built the one that's in the alcove where Nick
Yeah,
hides or
those were
Ben
built.
hides.
Right. Right.
But yeah, the others were existing.
Well, then on top of everything else, you have fights and breakaway and spider pulling things. And how did you deal with all that with choreography ahead of time? Did you know where the webs were going to go and what was going to pull?
We had multiple meetings with that, right?
Freddie, who was our fight coordinator and director for a lot of the fight sequences, he really came in prepared in a way I almost hate to say it that I hadn't seen before from a stunt coordinator, and also with his understanding of technology, and we could put him in the 3D model with the set designers, and he would plan the choreography based on what was there. If he had to start work on his choreography earlier, then he would then adjust as needed based on the 3D model, and what he learned was going to be available in the set.
Sometimes stunt coordinators have their own movie in mind. I've learned, but
Yeah.
or we have to go and set up boxes to represent the set, right?
Hey, and we did. We had practice stages set up for the stunts, for our interior and exterior. Freddie and I would say all of the good stunt coordinators understand that the more information you have to work with at the beginning, the better your sequence is going to be, the more effective it's going to be.
But yeah, I mean, you had just so many sets throughout this series. It was incredible. You did go back to a few, but it just seemed like, oh my God, there's more places. Oh my God.
Yeah, sometimes there's the trick of just turning in the camera. Robbie's apartment was also Flint's apartment, for example. That was a swing set. I think we had like 36 hours to turn that one over. Again, getting back to the reality of the time. And color wasn't always an indication of economic status. If you rented an apartment, the apartment owners wanted to have a good looking place. And the idea here is that Robbie lives in Harlem, where he would have found a lot of really nice and well taken care of real estate. The delineation in terms of color and feel and texture was really at Hooverville, where everything is muted, and we had pops of color in there that Helena would provide for us. That's where you want to show as a character an environment that is reflecting a different time and place, different economic status. The Hooverville idea, I was aware of Hoovervilles from research on another project, but I really dove deep this time, and they were all over the country, but the one area that most Americans anyway are familiar with, if at all, is what was set up on the north end of Central Park and what was a reservoir. And what's interesting though, there from that point, if you're there now, if you're there then, the park's surrounded by luxury apartment buildings. And so the juxtaposition between the shanty towns and these luxury apartment buildings, and you're seeing both at the same time, And there were complaints from people in the luxury apartment buildings. They didn't want to look down and see the shanty town, and the occupants of the shanty town probably lived across the street in the luxury apartments. It maybe the day before. The rawness of that world is what we really set out to define as a story point.
And Helena, you've had a lot of experience with Shantytown.
Yes, I have. The thing that I love about them is, again, is like adaptive reuse. How do you pick something off the street and make it your roof? How do you keep the cold from coming in? That's always fun, and it's just always fun to add all those different layers. And I have to give a shout out to Lisa Alcofer was my decorator who I brought in to do the interior of the in the first episode. She did a stellar job on making it look really real, where they have the meaning inside the house, and then the exterior was just a whole other scene, and just really fun to decorate. Like, all right, here's all this trash, guys, go
Mm.
for it. And we had a lot of research and how to use fabric, how do you use wood, how do you use tin, metal, all those good things. How do they cook? They cook outside on fires. That's great. Tons and tons of research. Yeah. But that's the fun part.
I've got a few thousand art books to support my nerdism.
He does. I love when I go into Warren's office and he's like, "Here, I've got some books for you." I'm like, "Yes."
Yeah.
I'm the same. I have to have the books.
Mm.
The digital's great, but I have to have books
Well,
too.
there isn't as, and sorry to cut you off, but I make a point of this when I guest lecture to these film students and high school kids. You take all the books that I have, and I won't say how many, but there's too many. You would probably find maybe 10% of the information that's in those books on the internet. So there's a whole world of information that you're missing out on, and this is, I think, leading to a lot of the sort of sameness of design in a lot of areas where the people were leaning into limited research and therefore limited thinking and limited creativity. Anyway, that's my
I'm with
soapbox for
you.
the
I have
moment.
a library in my house, so
Yes.
a whole room of books.
Yep.
What was your favorite set? Do you have a favorite?
You're gonna ask me that.
I know that's a rotten
Really,
question, but I
I
had to
I
ask.
really liked his office. I love the color palette that we worked within. Warren chose this really great green, and then we leaned into like rusty reds just to contrast with it. And I loved that we made a dark room in the bathroom, although we didn't really see it that much. I loved this scene where we had to create a mess in there, and then how do you break a desk, but then have it functional for the rest of the season when it's broken, and how many stacks of books do you need underneath it it was always an evolving set. Like when she packs up to move out, what is she taking with her? What is she leaving? And when you see it in the color version, I saw it first in black and white. And then when I saw it in color, I was like, "Ooh, you see the pattern in the curtains." Like, that made me
Mm.
excited.
And I
Yeah.
think people don't realize how hard it is to do period clutter.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Oh,
Mm-hmm.
yes.
Because things that are 100 years old look 100 years old. So you have to create all of that.
Lots and lots of paperwork.
But it all is got to be fabricated, got to be dreamed of and fabricated. And it takes the village that we put together to create all of that. And Warren, I'm sorry, what's your favorite set?
I have two: Ben's apartment and Alcove, the club cat's apartment. It's also
I know, I was gonna say, I really like the alcove too. I love those colors. He had me at orange. He's like, "Orange boosts." I'm like, "Oh, yes, please."
And velour velvety.
And
They
full
were
Yes.
they were gorgeous.
full disclosure, a project that we just finished. One of the sets has a similar color palette, which I was not at all trying to do, but it was something that made sense because of the time for the set, and I was like, "Ah." I looked at it one day, I was like, "Oh, man, how'd I do this again?"
Yeah, I didn't even pick up on that, so you're okay.
We'll have to talk about that next year.
Right.
Well, this was just fantastic. It was
Yeah.
so great to hear all the detail. I mean, really, the fact that you put all of those fabulous details on the sets were like kudos to both of you. It's just and all of your teams. It just looked amazing.
Well,
Thank you.
thanks for your kind words.
Yeah, really
It
appreciate it.
really is a team effort, and not only our teams, but also all of our vendors and all the support that we have around us in LA. It's great.
And
Yeah.
shot in LA.
Yeah, shot
out
in
in
LA.
LA.
I've had New Yorkers challenge me on that a
Mm.
few times, which has been good.
That's really
Right.
Oh my gosh. Well, congratulations to both of you.
Thank you.
And
Thanks so much.
thanks so much for coming
All
today.
right.
This is
No,
great.
thanks for your
Sharing
interest.
your ideas.
Thanks for joining us for this episode of Inside the Set with Set Decor. Don't forget to subscribe to our YouTube channel and visit our website, setdecor.com.